Mike Pacak, if everybody doesn't know, he was one of the promoters of Pinball Expo for years, and also was a part of Fun and Games with DeBartolo's arcades years ago all around the whole country. So he was going to share a little bit of that experience with you guys tonight. And Mike Pacak.
Well, I don't know, I kind of started out back when I was about 8. My dad brought home a pinball machine, and I've had it ever since. Then I went to school for electrical engineering and graduated, and then I was working part-time for DeBartolo Corporation, which was a big mall developer, but they decided to start a chain of arcades called Fun and Games, which they hired me after graduation to be director of operations for them, which I was for 21 years. That was 1975. And I kind of went through the whole, I don't know what you want to call it, renaissance of everything was mechanical to originally everything in the arcades were pinball machines. And then we had some arcade games. And then we had the Pongs and the early video games. Then, of course, came the Pac-Mans and the Ms. Pac-Mans. And we grew from one arcade to 76 arcades all over the country, and I was then director of operations of all of them. And the pinballs were a major factor at the beginning, but of course later years the video games knocked them out. In fact, I was one of the few chains that still had 3 or 4 pinballs in every arcade, because I always thought that if an older person came in, parent or grandparent came in and saw there were no pinballs, they'd just leave. But if there was a pinball there, they'd give their kid or grandkid $20 and say, I'll go play the pinballs. So I always had pinballs in the arcades. Then in '95, another company bought us out, and I went home. And I kind of been home ever since, just buying and selling junk. And Rob Burke was my partner in Pinball Expo, which we started in 1985. He originally met me coming to one of the arcades that I used to fix the games at, and we became good friends probably in under the 81, 82, and then he originally came up with the idea of Pinball Expo, but I had the connections with the industry, so I was able to convince Bally and Williams and Gottlieb, all them people, to bring games in that. And that was in 1985, and we were partners up until like 4 years ago. Along the way, I collected massive machines. I had probably 200 at one time. I collected a massive inventory of schematics and manuals, which I have more than anybody in the world, because I was in the right place at the right time to get them from distributors and manufacturers. And then because I was a large customer of Williams and Bally and Data East, and not so much Gottlieb, though I didn't really like Gottlieb, but before they would throw anything out, whether it be parts or manuals or schematics or translights or flyers, they would call Mike, because Mike would come with his big truck and take them instead of taking them to the dump. And Marvin and I hooked up. How many years ago was that?
17 years ago today.
17 years ago, Marvin and I hooked up and did Ohio Pinball Show. We started out in Akron, and then we were in Cuyahoga Falls after that. And I don't know, I'm kind of semi-retired now, although I still got buildings full of crap, etc. Still try to help people where I can. I have hundreds of back glasses yet, and flyers for everything known to man pretty much. But the arcades were fun. The arcades were fun. I opened them up all over the country over the years, and that was during the peak times, of course. Like we had a store here in Randall Park Mall, if you guys are familiar with the Cleveland area, at one time at this peak did $600,000 in quarters.
Wow.
Back in, we're probably talking middle 80s or so. We had 2 stores there actually, one downstairs, one upstairs, but the downstairs, that was our #1 store, did $600,000 all in quarters.
Is that each year?
Yeah, $600,000 for a year, you're right. And actually, our next best store was in Orlando, Florida, at a place called Florida Mall, which was a newer mall, but it did like 400,000. But those were all, again, quarters, one at a time. I don't know what else to say. The shows to me are always fun. I enjoy putting on the show with Marvin for, how many years we do? 12? I don't know. 13? 14 or 15. And with Rob, I did it for like 35 years. And now I'm just a attendee or hanger-outer or something. I don't know what I am, but. But I still have several pinballs in my house and enjoy playing pinballs and enjoy seeing the people. You know, there's a lot of us old timers. I'm 70 now, so a lot of old timers have came and went. There's a lot of legends in the industry over the years that started out coming to the Specialty Show in Chicago that have all passed away, that were early pinball designers that designed a lot of the stuff that we all grew up with. I don't know. To me, the show's complexion has changed a lot over the years. That used to be a lot of collectors and, well, more collectors and people that tinkered with stuff at home. Now today you got a lot more players and tournament people, and I mean the EM machines don't seem to be much interest anymore. It's mostly, I call it the DM machines, but I can remember in 1975 when a brand new pinball machine, Wizard, came out at the time by Bally. It was $951. And what's the latest? Toy Story is what, 12,000, 13?
Yeah, 14.
14, okay.
It was 12 and 14, yeah.
Yeah, and the Stern ones are the cheap ones now. What's the cheapest there, 6 or something?
Like almost 7.
Almost 7.
Wow.
Unbelievable. But people are paying it, so they keep making it, you know. Then, of course, they're so complicated. I mean, anymore between, you got to go to school for like a week to learn how to play the thing. And then that's before the hidden rules, right? Of course, there is a big resurgence. It seems like, I don't know if I want to say middle-aged people, but I mean, I don't know, the young kids are more in turn. Well, the barcades that are coming back, right, Marvin? You got Marvin has a league at Stonehenge in Akron here, where a big league. Donnie's got a bigger league in Cleveland here. He's got, I don't know, 125 people or so. And there's a lot of barcades opening up all around the country. And the prices of pinballs have went sky high. I mean, I literally would be a millionaire today if I had all the stuff that I sold. There for a while, I sold like 3 containers to Australia. Australia was big on pinball when we weren't that big on pinball. And they would load a whole container up and ship it over to Australia. Then there for a while over here when pinballs sort of died down, but when they came back, they were actually importing games from overseas. What, Germany, Marvin, and where else did several companies overseas were exporting games?
Brazil,
Germany, Brazil, that people were buying. Trent was one of them, and buying containers at a time to bring them back for dirt because they just wanted to get rid of them.
You guys know the Big Bang Bar and all? You guys know that game? No. Remember that?
Yeah, he has a story about, I mean, he told us the story about when about the, the Capcom deal.
Well, Big Bang Bar, Big Bang Bar was going to be the last game that Capcom made, and they only made about 10 of them. I know I had 3 at one time.
Wow.
And one of their designers, Python Angelo, convinced them that this stupid game called Flipper Football, which is a stupid game, was going to make money. So they made that game and never made Big Bang Bar. But it was such a flop that Capcom, of course, which is Japanese, pulled the plug on the Big Bang Bar project. And they had made a lot of parts for it. I had hundreds of translights for it that were left over, and they end up selling off all the stuff. And then a guy named Gene Cunningham bought a bunch of parts and ended up making, I don't know, 200 of them or something like that.
Wyatt, you've seen them, right?
Yeah, I've seen 2 of them.
Oh yeah, where at?
one on location at Flippers in Grady, North Carolina, and then the other one, I forget where I saw the other one, but I know I've seen two before.
I wonder if they were originals. They probably were the remakes, because the originals, unfortunately, are worth like, I don't know, $40,000 or something. Well, even the remakes.
I sold my remake, yeah.
What,
Yeah.
10, 15? More?
Yeah, something like that, right, and that was.
That was some
15
years ago.
That was 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. But it was a pretty good game. It was a pretty good game.
But you said Williams bought the rights to that too, then?
Well, Capcom originally gave 2 games to Williams that they were gonna make it, but then in the midst of that, Williams went out of the pinball business. And they actually had 2 games sitting over there, which I ended up acquiring from Williams. Because they actually went out of the pinball business, so I ended up acquiring one which was ripped apart and one was together. Then when Alvin G, which is another upcoming company that was in business for a short time, they were in business, maybe 3 years. So happens my stepson at the time, well, I was good friends with Alvin Gottlieb and Michael Gottlieb. Alvin was the father, Michael was the son, and they were in business about 3 years, but most of the other companies literally buried them. And when they went out of business, I ended up buying like 200 machines from them and all their parts, which I mostly sold immediately to somebody else, except for all the stuff I wanted, which was back glasses, plastics, generics, play fields. But that stuff changed hands a couple times along the way. But they went out of business and they were so mad at everybody else, so they called me and I bought, there was about 200 machines at the time, but still brand new in the boxes, and I was buying them for $400 or $500, $600. So pretty much almost all world tours or pistol pokers or mystery castles, so they never made too many of those. If they're, around, they came from me. And there was another game that Capcom was going to make, Kingpin, which there was only, 8 or so of those made. I had 2 of those originally. There was another guy that supposedly was going to remake them. In fact, I helped him out with a translite. He didn't have a translite, but it never came to be. But even in the day, the heyday of pinball, almost 80% of pinballs went overseas. They went to Germany, especially. Germany took a lot, all around the world, but only about 20-some percent actually came to the States, even in the heydays. In fact, Gottlieb was even more than that, the company which was the sole exporter for Gottlieb, which is a company called Mondial, they actually bought or saved Gottlieb from going out of business because they were the exclusive exporter to France, Germany, Italy, and it was worthwhile for them just to stay in business because they were the sole exporter to overseas. I don't know, what else, Marvin?
I was just always wondering, I know you had all them translates all them years, and you got all that stuff they were throwing away, it just amazes me, what was the thought process about making all that, and not making the games?
Well, Gary...
you're talking thousands sometimes.
Gary Stern has been president of Data East Pinball, then it was Sega Pinball, now it's Stern Pinball. Well, when it was Data East Pinball and Sega Pinball, although his name, Data East was called Data East and Sega was called Sega, but he was the president, CEO, whatever, so it wasn't his money he was spending. So like Guns N' Roses, for example, I think they made 3,000 games, but he would order 5,000 translites, thinking he was going to make 5,000 games. So then at the end of the day, he's got 2,000 translites left. And it's like, what are we going to do, throw them out? He had playfields left, he had this left, he had that left, and I was pretty tight with all of them, and they used to claim that they were using it for their Christmas party, which I never asked any questions. But I would go up there on a Saturday, literally, and he would say, what do you give me for them? I said, $1. I'll take 300 of these, 200 of these, 500 of these. They were gonna throw them in a dumpster, okay? And so I bought hundreds of those, and then years later, there was a whole stash of Gottlieb translates, which there was like 16,000 of those, which I didn't even really want those, because they had made more translates than they ever made games. But I bought them for $1 a piece, but there was another guy, some of you guys might know him, Kurt Weaver. Kurt Weaver used to sell games on eBay. He's from Toledo. And he was a sort of an entrepreneur, but I bought 16,000 of them for $16,000, but I sold 10,000 of them to him for $10,000 and sold 1,600 to another guy for $4. So I ended up with 5,000 free. All I had to do was make a trip to Chicago, pick them up, drop them off. And so most every Gottlieb translate that's out there anywhere passed through my hands originally. That's why you see them on eBay all over the place. But that's why I told people seriously that, you know, a Diet Coke costs more than these translates cost me. And that was the same with a lot of other parts too, that Williams used to throw away plastics, translates, playfields. They're just gonna put them in a dumpster. Rather put them in a dumpster, they tell me to come pick them up. So I did.
I mean, there was a time, and Mike would tell you, even in I would say early to late 90s, it was hard to get parts.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah.
was, I mean, really hard to get anything. I mean, parts wise were pretty, like, you look for, I mean, it was pretty hard, and that, you know, was until these companies like Marco and them started doing stuff, it was, nobody knew. You say, where do I get, if your rubber broke on a game, everybody's like, where do I get
Well,
it?
especially
You know,
mechanical
whatever,
mechanical
anything.
parts and that. That's
It's
why,
hard to get to stuff.
you know, so many parts got scrapped out just for parts.
Now it's easy. I mean,
Yeah,
comparatively,
relatively.
it used to be like, if you had a new old stock part, it was like gold at one point
Oh,
in
yeah.
time, back especially when Cunningham
Oh yeah.
had all that stuff. I mean, it was hard to, I mean, it was expensive.
Well, the Williams parts changed hands a couple times. They originally asked me to bid on them, but then this guy named Gene Cunningham, which is household name to some of you people, he came in and offered stupid money for them, which they could have been bought for pennies on the dollar. But he offered stupid money for them, and ultimately never really got his money out of him. He ended up going bankrupt on that down the road. But I wasn't willing to buy them, not for what they wanted. It was crazy. As far as schematics and manuals, I had the foresight when everything went from mechanical to electronic that I badgered the manufacturers and distributors for all their old filing cabinets, you know, with all their old schematics from the 40s up to the 70s when they quit making those. So that's why to this day I have a website, Pinball Mike, that I sell schematics on regularly and manuals that pretty much nobody else has, because nobody else had the foresight to worry about it. Again, me being an engineer, I always knew it was easier to work on a machine with the schematic, so I wanted them for myself. But now, you know, I sell them all over the world all the time. When people need, I mean, they're amazed. You know, you got a schematic for 1952? Yeah, I have it. Yeah, no problem. In fact, I'm trying to work on out a deal to sell a bunch of this stuff to, I can't think of the name of the company. Marco, I think it is. Marco, I think it is. that Nancy, and especially Mark, who was the founder of Marco, passed away, what, a year or so now, a little over a year?
Yeah, December.
They were always supposed to come to my house in their travels from Ohio, Pennsylvania, but they never did. And I talked to Nancy some after Mark had passed away, but I'm trying to get hooked up with the newer generation now and to pass on a bunch of this stuff so somebody has it down the road. Otherwise, you know, I don't know where it's going to go, but you know, there are people still going to need it. Same thing with flyers. You know, flyers don't mean some to certain people, but flyers are sort of like baseball cards to people that if they have the game, a lot of times they want the original advertising brochure flyer. So in fact, I put a book out in, '95, encyclopedia of pinball that has every pinball flyer from 48 up to 95 at that point, in black and white, not color. But it's good for identification purposes. If you want to say, oh, I remember playing this game, you know, when I was in whatever, you could flip through it and find the game. But the shows are still fun. I don't know, I enjoy seeing the people, and I don't enjoy loading and unloading trucks. It's getting too hard to do that. It about killed me this week. I have a good friend that's been working with me for years. He always worked my door at Chicago, and I'm 70, he's only like going to be 78 next month, and he still helps me a couple days a week. And this week was hot, and Donnie came down Monday and helped me. He helps me quite a bit. But we tried to finish up everything yesterday. That's why I never got here till late, because only got so much energy left. I'm not the Energizer Bunny anymore. But I still operate a little bit. I got 4 campgrounds I got games out at, and makes a few bucks. And I don't know.
Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have a favorite game?
My favorite game probably is still Fireball. Okay, Fireball is one of their Fireball Mechanical by Bally. As far as pinball, that was one of the games I had early on. I still have one, and it's multi-balls like 1972. But I have to say, as far as mechanical, solid state, I don't know, probably Adams Family, or I mean Adams Family. I have actually Adams Family Gold serial number 3. The 2 people that designed it have 1 and 2, and they made sure I got number 3. And I have a prototype Funhouse, which Donnie was trying to get me to bring, maybe next year. It's different. It has another target than all the other ones have. Those are a couple of my favorites.
In the chat room, we got, what's your favorite beer?
Zero. My favorite beer is Zero. My dad owned a bar when I was growing up, okay, so I always say he drank and smoked enough for me, okay, so I've had about 5 beers in my life and never touched a cigarette and never will, so. My dad owned a bar here, and I worked at a Sunoco station 2 blocks down, part-time forever. I worked at my dad's bar one day. I refused to work there and deal with stupid people. Okay? If I want to act stupid, I want to remember it. I don't want you to tell me, boy, you really acted stupid yesterday. So just don't have a taste for it, don't care for it, don't. And my favorite beer is Diet Coke. And if you twist my arm, I might drink Diet Pepsi. But.
Don't do it.
What's that?
Said, don't do it.
Don't do it. No, I'm serious. My dad, I wouldn't call him an alcoholic, but he owned a bar for the whole time I was growing up, and just made me have no interest in it at all.
What do you feel like is your greatest achievement in pinball? Like to you personally?
Well, Pinball Expo. I'm real proud about Pinball Expo. And I was partners with Rob for like 35 years, and due to kind of a falling out situation, which I wasn't happy with, I agreed to be bought out. But I think it was a pretty good show. I mean, we were the only show for probably 20, 25 years. And I remember we started this before there was internet. Okay, so that wasn't an easy task. Okay, but I think it ran pretty smoothly. And again, we were the only show. Granted, we were the only show in town, and I would say for 25, maybe 30, we were the best show. I don't exactly think Expo is the best show anymore, but there's a lot of good shows out there now. I mean, there's a Texas show, which is a pretty good show. There's Allentown show, which is pretty good. And there's a couple other upcoming shows, but Texas to me is probably, I went a couple years ago, probably the best show in my opinion right now. But I mean, Expo still exists. Why we started Expo in Chicago was because, number one, all the pinballs except for Atari were made in Chicago forever. Number two, all the designers, artists live in Chicago, okay? So we had seminars forever, and to this day they have an autograph session that, all the people that worked in the industry are mostly in Chicago. So if you do a show here and you want a speaker, or Dallas, where you got to fly them in, put them up, whatever. We got a captive audience in Chicago, so that's why we picked Chicago way back in '85 because that's where all the pinballs were made. In fact, even now, Jersey Jack finally just moved there. I've been friends with Jersey Jack since '74. Initially, when he started in New Jersey, I told him he was out of his mind because everything's in Chicago and all the people are in Chicago. So he ends up hiring people in Chicago to design games in New Jersey, and then he's in New Jersey and they're playing hooky in Chicago, and ultimately they moved to Chicago. And again, most all the parts, well, no, of course now it's a little different because a lot of stuff's made overseas, but I mean, at one time, all the coils, all the legs, all the translights, everything were actually in a small area of Chicago over the years. And it was in general, it was the coin-op capital of the world besides pinball, but I mean, all the mechanical games, all the video games, well, Atari, of course, Atari was West Coast, but it was, basically the coin-op capital of the world, and so that's why we picked Chicago as, because, when Rob and I got together, and nobody knew us from Adam, we're two yahoos from Ohio putting on a pinball show, and, there were a couple different pinball magazines way back then, and, by word of mouth, and then later years, after the first year, more than 2 people showed up, my heart was in it. So after that, I had 76 arcades, and I was friendly with people that Aladdin's Castle had like 200 and some, and then Time Out had 100 and some. I had posters made up, Pinball Expo tournament, yada yada. In fact, there's one sitting in my booth over there that went up in all the arcades all over the country. So that was an easy way and to promote it. And I had an 800 number at the time, which I should say Mr. DeBartolo had a number then at the time, but he didn't care that you could call me and ask for information, So that made the word getting spread a little bit easier. But and the stories over the years of Gary Stern, of course, still around. His father was still around way back then, and Steve Kordak and Norm Clark and Alvin Gottlieb. The stories those guys would tell, you'd sit there be mesmerized by the stories they told you about, happenings of the 40s and 50s and 60s. Of course, unfortunately, they're all gone now. We actually had Nolan Bushnell came one time, too, that although I tried to get him to talk about pinball, and he mostly talked about video, which was okay, it was interesting, but I wanted to talk about, why they got in and out of pinball, but he went off on a tangent on video, so we had him as a guest speaker at our banquet the one year. But we used to get a fair amount, probably at our peak, we had 50, let's say, from all over the world. We had people from Germany, from Italy, a lot of people from Australia. Michael Salub, who put out several books, I'm good friends, I talk to him almost every week still, from Australia. He came regularly, and from all over the country, of course. But
the Pinball Compendium?
Yeah, Pinball Compendium, right, yeah. He said he's working on another volume. I don't know what's going on, but he's got, I think 4, 5, something, I don't know. Something like that, but I know he's been saying he's working on another one, but then, in fact, years ago, a guy named Bill Kurtz, some of you might know him, he was actually a partner with us in Expo for the first couple years. And him and a guy named Gary Flower, which is from England, put out a pinball book, Lure the Silver Ball, way back in, I don't know, was that 78, 9, 80, something like that. But he originally was partners with Rob and I, it's either 2 or 3 years. But he decided he didn't want to do that no more, so he went home. But he originally was a partner with us. He was a literary guy. We used to put out a real nice pamphlet. We used to mail out, I don't know, a couple thousand of them. That was also expensive, but it was 3 pages, and he was a literary guy. He wrote all that stuff, and I was the sort of the connection to the industry, and as well I always dealt with the hotels and wrote the contracts and that. And Rob, he would bug everybody to speak primarily, but well, that's true.
So I have a question. I'm an purist.
Okay.
I like the pinball, and I like the arcade machines, stuff like that. Problem with that, you have to have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of know-how to be able to fix things. So a lot of the arcade builders are going to electronic feel pinball machines, which is basically a TV monitor hooked up to a couple
Right.
buttons. And the arcades are going to the main, which is the go find the rocks, blah, blah, blah. So what do you think about, if you want to call it the easy way out that people are going to, compared to the probably your entire life be basically smelling ozone of the old electronics?
Well, when you say old electronic, you mean mechanical ding, ding, ding?
Yeah, I mean, basically the old school. I mean, when I'm talking about the electronic, they're doing pinballs where they basically take a TV,
Oh, I know.
long TV,
I know.
and simulate the pinball
Oh, I know. Yeah,
through
there's,
the computer.
well, they can put, 408, well, they can put 1,000 games on them now.
Exactly, yeah, and
The-
people are going the easy way out, and I'm a purist, and it's tough to be a purist.
How old are you?
I'm 53.
You won't be, there won't be too many purists left too much
Well,
longer.
I know that, but it's just like, and and I'm actually starting late because I never really had the room to put these machines in. Now I'm just starting to do the collecting, but like everyone I know is like, oh, just buy the computer, do the electronic field, do the easy way, and it's just like irks me, but yet it is.
Well, you
the
see what's
easiest
in,
way
you
to
see
do.
what's in this room here. Other than Brian, you guys may or may not know, Brian is Donnie's brother. Okay, he has about 80, mostly mechanical games, and he's got several here. They're mostly ones with no signs on, don't say for sale, not for sale, those are
Right.
his. Mechanical pins, I don't know, is there 10 here? I don't even think there's 10, I don't know. Because nobody wants them anymore, nobody wants them. There's a few other arcade games, again, most of those are Brian's. So, just the old school,
Yeah, I missed the 10 at John Lake by 3 days.
you missed the what?
I missed there were 3 penny arcade, or 10 penny arcade machines were in the warehouse at John Lake, and they went at the auction. I missed getting them by a day, because somebody had come prior to the sell-off. And
Well, there were a bunch at Cedar Point, which only sold 4 or 5 years ago, that I found out about like 10 minutes after the auction. I was pissed.
Exactly.
And I had bugged them for years, but they sold off, well, Hercules, of course, was solid state, but they had a whole row of mechanical pins in the back. Then a few years later, they had another auction with expensive stuff, but they sold off stuff that went for dirt. Mechanical gun games, mechanical pins.
Yeah, the 10 at John Lake were in a warehouse where employees knew where they were.
I don't remember that.
So you could play them,
I don't
and they
remember
were
that.
totally forgot about, and they were forgot about through the sale and through the auction, somebody scooped them up just before.
I don't, I was at the auction and I was all over that place, up and down and around, but they must have been hit pretty good.
It was 2 days, I think 2 days prior to the auction,
Wow.
they disappeared.
Sorry, I missed them. Well, there's still a bunch of old stuff at Kennywood too, that they won't, in the basement, they won't let anybody in there. There's some old stuff at Kennywood, and sooner or later it'll get flooded, or somebody new will take over. And I mean, I cleaned out a bunch of games. You guys ever hear of Chippewa Lake? Chippewa Lake, I cleaned out 30-some games there 8 years after they closed. Okay, I ended up hooking up with the guy that owned the arcade that was from Florida, and so happens he was coming up next week. And in fact, I have it on film somewhere. I walked around there, and I can't think of his name, but anyhow, in fact, Rob Burke, my partner, was with me at the time, a couple other people, and what do you want for the stuff? I don't know. What do you normally pay for stuff? Well, even back in the 70s, 80s, if I wanted something, I pretty much would pay $100 for it, which was 75 more than a lot of people would pay. Okay? No, seriously. And I says, well, I'd pay $100 a piece. And they were in various, there was no pinballs. It was all arcades, baseball, no videos. I says, I'll pay $100 a piece. He goes, will you take them all? I say, I'll take them all. I think it was 32 or something. And between us, we took them all. But that was like 8 years after it was closed. That was at Chippewa Lake. That's not too far from, I'm kind of spun around, but that's not too far from here. But to find, catches of those kind of things anymore is getting harder and harder. I mean, most of the old timers have passed away, and their kids got the buildings and knocked them down and don't care, you know?
Well, if you were a tinkerer
Right.
and wanted to buy broken machines to fix them, where would you look?
Not easy today.
Okay, I'm just curious. 'Cause
Come on down. I still have a fair amount, okay?
Okay.
I got 10,000 square foot of crap, I call it, in my backyard, in buildings. I mean, these are solid buildings, you know.
I mean,
There's gun games, there's gun games, there's pinballs, it's getting more to the bottom of the barrel, but they're in most cases fixable. But, you know, like I dug out, what I bring, 4 over here, I bought a Secret Service, Escape from Lost World, those are solid state, a Meteor, and, the World Tour is Alvin G. But, you know, those were resurrected from the dead that had no translights, no boards, no nothing, which I have somewhere, but we put them all together. But I still have X amount of mechanicals here and there. I got a lot of baseball games around. And a lot of parts. And not a lot of energy anymore.
I actually went to the Cedar Point, the most recent Cedar Point auction, and won a Lighthouse arcade game for them for $200.
Oh, yeah, the one that was at
At
the...
Gray's.
Yeah, great. I went and looked at it the week before, but to me, they did something stupid. They held that auction. There's a big amusement park trade show in Florida. I've been going for 40 years. It's called IAPA. And they held that auction the same time as the show, okay?
Oh.
Which, you know, there was a lot of neat stuff there. And I went the week before and looked at all the stuff. And there was a couple of things I was interested in. There was a couple of old World Series baseballs. I don't know if you remember those. They still went for fair money, but and there was some newer stuff, like you said, Lighthouse, and there was some other stuff. But yeah, that was in Superior, or where was that? In Cleveland somewhere, where that auction gallery was. I can't remember now. But in fact, I got the catalog for it somewhere I know. But they had it at the exact same time as this amusement park trade show, which is really mostly for the industry. But there was some stuff there that industry people might have been interested in. But they go to the show every year. Which is to me kind of a stupid move. But well, they haven't had their museum open now for what, 3 years or so at Cedar Point. Because I've been there like 6 times this year already. Because my granddaughter calls me a 70-year-old kid, and I tell her don't forget that. But.
Are you riding the roller coaster?
Oh, absolutely. The ones I fit. Now, see?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, well, depending on...
They shrunk everything because of insurance.
Oh.
Everything went by half almost.
Nah, I won't go that far. You know, we grew by half is the problem.
Well, maybe that too.
You know? I mean, I literally am so close, like I was there, last week before, that about half I fit on, and the other half I says, keep pushing.
Yeah.
And it depends, if I get a big football player, he'll break your ribs, he'll get the bar down, okay? If I get a wimpy, no offense, girl, sorry, sir. I'm like, push a little bit more, okay? So I wrote about half. I got to remember, I'm not exact. I got to remember not to eat too much because I'm real close. They got these screens on. If you ever saw, they got these screens on the, you know, they're like big LCD screens. Green, red, red. That's row 6A, that's me. They come over, excuse me, sir, can you pull the bar down anymore? No. Can you push it down more? The walk of shame, get off. But, no, I still ride the roller coaster, sure. I don't know, what else can I tell you?
So,
Go ahead.
so what do you think it's going to take to get the Tinkerers back alive, or is it just a dying breed?
I think it's not only almost dying, it's dead. Okay, because there's not enough reasonable equipment out there to pick up anymore. I mean, because it's either been scrapped or torn apart. Or I mean, there's a guy named Jeff Moorhead, okay, that was here last year. Unfortunately, when he was getting married today or
No,
something.
his nephew was getting married, that's why.
Oh, I thought he was
No, it
getting
wasn't him.
That's what Donnie told me he was getting
No, he
married.
had the wrong, no, it was his.
I
he
says,
had-
I thought he was married.
Yeah,
He's got
married,
kids.
yeah.
I thought, I don't know, maybe he got divorced.
But
But
his nephew, and he said he'll be back.
so is that You think you believe it, or is it
I
bullshit?
know, I believe it. Nah, I believe it.
Okay. But he used to be, his nickname is Junkman Jeff. In fact, I don't know if you guys have been there other years, he's always in the corner over there, and he brings a lot of junk. I mean, he still finds his stuff, Pennsylvania, West Virginia,
Yeah.
and he brings, some of the stuff's getting to be pretty humble, though. It's getting close to not, I don't know, salvageable, but.
You only see each year it gets worse.
Yeah, each year it gets worse. It gets like, I wouldn't take that for nothing, no, no. And he'll want $300 for it or something, you know, so. But there's not too many, I mean, I got hundreds of machines out of Pittsburgh. I never could get things out of Cleveland. You know, I'm in Youngstown, I'm halfway between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. But Cleveland, Akron was always tough. You know, Cleveland had Monroe Distributing, Cleveland Coin, Schaefer. But even the operators there, well, to this day, Cadillac Music, you know, Cadillac Music still got a big warehouse full of stuff. That's where you need to go if you ever can get in there, Cadillac Music. They got a lot of old stuff there. I don't know if you've ever been there or not.
Nope.
Yeah, you need to excuse the expression, weasel your way into there, okay?
I know the boys really.
Well,
Oh, there we go.
yeah, well, later years now, the boys are in charge, okay? But when the father was in charge,
Yeah.
and
You can't get nothing from
the,
And that's in Cleveland?
yeah, Payne Avenue.
boys, yeah. Boys.
Payne Avenue, or no, Superior, what's it?
Superior.
Superior. Right next to the Cadillac dealer. It's funny because a mutual friend of ours named Mark Salas posted a bunch of pictures maybe 5 years ago. He goes, look at this warehouse I found in, what do you say, Idaho or something. And there's a balcony like above Cadillac Music. You look down and you see all these machines. I said, Idaho, your ass. I said, that's Cleveland, okay? You want to know the address? Okay. I said, I was there 30 years ago, okay? Maybe, let me say, no, probably 40 years ago. And a lot, well, they're selling off some of it now, right, the kids?
A little bit. I mean, they have ball bowlers stacked end on end.
Oh, they got tons of stuff.
50, 100 of them.
But they wouldn't, the father wouldn't sell to anybody ever, like ever. Ever.
I've dealt with them quite a bit.
I'm sorry?
What was he gonna do with it?
Ask the kids, I don't know. He's been dead for many, many years.
Tell me, the one guy, the mentality is about that was, if I sell it to you, you're gonna put it somewhere.
You're gonna operate
You're
it.
gonna operate
Yeah.
it, so I don't sell nothing to nobody.
Right, that is true,
old
that is
school.
true.
That's old school
Right,
thought process.
right.
That's the way it is, the way it was, the way it
Yeah.
was. I mean, all these places, if you were lucky enough to get into them, to talk with them.
Well, there was a local operator in
They didn't
Youngstown
wanna do it.
called Acme Music, okay? In fact, I just bought one of their games recently. They've been out of business for years. But they literally stripped everything off the coin door. Nothing. Metal. That's it, okay? There was no way in hell you're going to bring it back to coin op, okay? And I bought one out of a basement locally, and then most collectors even wanted original. Fortunately, I got enough junk laying around. I just took the door up, put another door on. In fact, it was a Faro, it was a Williams Faro, fairly desirable machine, okay? But the door's plugged right in. I took the door up, put my door on, and boom, we're done, you know. But their mentality was that, you know, there's no way you're gonna operate it. So they took every single, there was nothing left on the door. They put a push button to start it. They took every single thing off. Well, then there was like one mentality, I don't know if it changed, Chuck E. Cheese. I'm sure you guys know Chuck E. Cheese. You know, they were always instructed to like bust them up and throw them in a dumpster. Everything. Busted up. Now recently, in fact, I got a call, but I got a call too late. I guess now they changed their tune a little bit. They shove them out the back door. And then somebody says, they're out the back door. And then we all run to get them, except I was too late. I was too late, okay? But they used to literally bust them up. Just, I mean, you know, they wouldn't sell them. I mean, maybe for tax purposes, they wrote them off or whatever. I don't know. But back in the day, again, because I was close with the manufacturers and distributors, because I dealt with them in town here, Monroe Distributing and Cleveland Coin, they pretty much would never throw anything out without calling me. So, you know, I would get pins, jukes, just, you know, make them go away.
What about bowling alleys? Any old bowling alleys that had the original games and stuff?
Well, see, bowling alleys, though, pretty much never operated their own games. You know, they were always in, they always had an operator, you know, Bell Music, you know, who's now the king of everywhere over here. But even anymore, they have any pinballs left at all? I don't think they have any. Hardly.
Nope.
Marvin, they got nothing, right? Marvin's good friends with Husan over there too, so. Did they move yet, by the way, or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They moved
Yeah,
out
they
to-
moved to
they're all-
Copley.
yeah,
Copy out, what,
Yeah,
off of 71?
If they want, if there's a place that, now they call me, if there's a place, they want a pinball machine, they say, hey, call me, go put one in there for them, they don't wanna mess with them. But that's not the way it ever used to be.
Oh, no,
That
but
would never happen ever.
I mean, in the days, well, I don't know about Bell Music, in the town I live, Youngstown was a big mob town, okay? It's halfway between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, which means we had two mobs. We had the Chicago and the New York, Cleveland and Pittsburgh. There was two sides of the river, okay? You didn't go over there, and I didn't come over here. No, I was never involved with that, but operators didn't go over there and put their machines in the bar or you wouldn't dare put your own in, because that's, you'd probably get burned down. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's how vicious it was, especially Youngstown.
Dude, when I was 22, I was a manager of a restaurant, I won't say which one. I gave the Pepsi distributor a stack of money. You were never supposed to ask why.
The Pepsi distributor, huh? Don't know that deal.
You're never supposed to ask why.
Okay.
You walked in and grabbed the stack of cash, and then you were okay.
Well, like in Youngstown, a lot of does Bell own bars or no? They never got into that? Because in Youngstown, a lot of the operators would end up loaning the bars money, and then they'd end up owning the bars, okay? But the bowling alleys, back to your original question, I don't know if bowling alleys ever owned their own equipment, you know, that was beyond them, you know, you'd have Bell Music, or we had different ones in town.
Elam,
Elam,
downtown,
yeah,
down south,
yeah,
they
yeah.
were down south,
B&B.
B&B, yeah, that's,
George, still around there. So.
he was another one that was a hoarder. I've been there several times. He had a bunch of ball bowlers upstairs, and I don't know, does he still have them? Anybody know? I don't know. What takes his first name?
Who? Which one?
B&B.
I don't
Brown, what's his,
know.
why, what's his first name? Do you know?
I don't know, but somebody he used to work for B&B.
When we're here.
Yeah, the guy that's on the posters.
I can't think of,
Flooring guy?
Oh, yeah,
right.
yep.
Yeah, the guy
Yep.
here, one of the vendors.
Oh, Futuretronics maybe, they're the
Yeah,
brand
that-
guys.
Yeah.
Futuretronics. You
Yeah,
know,
Wayne, I think, yeah.
Wayne.
but again, Cleveland was always tough. I could never, but Pittsburgh, I got a lot of stuff out of Pittsburgh, and West Virginia, I got a lot of stuff out of West Virginia, that they were a lot more open on selling. Well, they knew, I had the connection a lot because I was referred to Bartlow, which gave me some credibility, and they knew I wasn't operating it. Okay, I was buying it as a collector myself, and even back then, I'd pay $100. I'd take 50, 20, 30, and most of the time after that, they'd say, well, you want all these records, or you want all these wall boxes, you want them? Yeah, sure, throw them on the truck.
Nice.
But I wasn't operating them, so they weren't afraid to sell them to me.
Yeah, and then the other thing, they didn't want to sell you something and then 2 days later you're calling.
Oh, no.
They want,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Well, like I call it, no bitch rights, and that's the same way too. If I ever sell you anything, you come over, you look at it, and look at it good, and once it's out of here, I don't want to hear about it, okay? I mean, if it's blatantly missing something or something, is one thing, okay, but, yeah, well, Marvin, even today, when we buy stuff from whoever, you look at it, and it is what it is, it's no bitch rights on bringing it back.
Yeah.
You take the good with the bad. Can I take my truckload of Golden Tee or PGA cabinets that I took from Husan one time? Cabinets, because I took the bad, but I'm still waiting for the good. I didn't get back to get the good. I got a whole, remember the one time, we loaded them out the front there.
Left, yeah.
We loaded them out the front.
I haven't been down there for ages.
Now, does our buddy LeBron have that yet or no? So I think he took over
You
the
bought it.
Yeah, he bought it.
right.
Yeah.
We bought both sides now, right?
Tangier,
All that.
Well-
remember the old Tangier?
Oh, yeah, I've been there, but I mean, he bought the other side too.
Yeah,
now.
they bought their-
Yeah.
On both sides.
That's gonna be a medical,
Right.
Was it really?
Yes.
Oh, really? Well, that's kind of interesting.
like, medical, sports medicine. stuff.
Medical marijuana?
No.
Well, our local McDonald's guy sold our local black McDonald's guy sold all of his McDonald's, and now he sells medical marijuana.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
But in the days, I mean, they made money hand over foot, the operators, they didn't even care. I mean, they would mostly have their stuff in warehouses just because they don't want anybody else to have it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when it gets to the point that they're full, what are you gonna do? You know, what are you gonna do? So, because back in the day, I mean, face it, the Pac-Man days, the Space Invader days, even early pinball, I mean, they just made money hand over foot, you know, but today, what, I don't know. I mean, fortunately, guys like Marvin are still operating, I have a couple pinballs out, but Marvin's operating pinballs, and now he can make decent money on them. Well, he's got leagues in that too.
But you're not gonna make that.
Not make a ton, not like the days of the,
Not like that, not like your.
well, you know, the Mortal Kombats and I mean, I can remember when Gauntlet came out, if you guys know the game Gauntlet, okay? That we were fortunate enough, I always got test games from the manufacturer. So I got games usually a month or 6 weeks before they came out. So I knew before you knew it was even coming out, how much money it made. Gauntlet was the first game I ever had, made $1,000 a week.
Wow.
$1,000 a week, in quarters now, remember. Remember, you could have 4 people playing at a time and you could buy in. You know, that was like the first game like that. $1,000 a week. Mortal Kombat was another big one. Like one of the stories I told, which, you know, obviously gave me influence with Williams, when Mortal Kombat came out, I said, I'll take 150. Okay, 2 for every store. Well, that kind of, you know, gets you some brownie points.
Yeah.
I don't know, any other questions? But there isn't much old stuff around. I mean, it's slim pickings, and there aren't many guys like you around that want to tinker with them. I mean, I still will go on them. If I get calls for mechanical, I'll still go out on them. Solid state, I can't see the best. Plus, I don't like working on circuit boards anyhow. But if I get local calls for mechanicals, whether it be bowler, shuffle, pinball, I'll still go out on calls if it's fairly close by. So I always consider it a challenge. Any more questions?
Very interesting, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope I didn't bore everybody. Oh, God. Now I can go to sleep.
Now you can have your beer.
Oh, there's one in every crowd. No, I think my
You ever
dad.
put the Diet Pepsi?
Oh, now you're.
It's actually too late.